The silence stretched just long enough for doubt to enter the room. Ethan Cole had built an empire by trusting numbers, contracts, and verified risks, not the instincts of a hotel waitress standing between him and a seven-figure agreement. Yet something about Claire Bennett did not fit the pattern of a mistake. She was not dramatic. She was not pleading. She was calculating. Her eyes were not on him, but slightly above his right shoulder, focused on something most people would never think to notice. "You have 3 seconds to explain," Ethan said quietly. Claire did not answer immediately. She tilted her head almost imperceptibly, as if confirming a thought she did not want to be wrong about. "The sound," she finally said. It changed. Ethan frowned slightly. "What sound?" Claire glanced toward the ceiling structure above the corridor leading into the ballroom. "Everything in a building has a rhythm. Air systems, elevators, lighting rigs. When something falls out of rhythm, it means something moved." One of the guards exchanged a skeptical look with another. To them, she sounded like someone guessing. To Ethan, she sounded like someone remembering. "You are delaying a room full of investors because of a noise?" he asked. Claire answered with quiet certainty. "Because of the wrong noise." 5 seconds passed. Then 6. Ethan did not move. Behind him, his assistant shifted nervously. "Sir, we are already 90 seconds behind the signing window." Ethan did not respond. His attention remained on Claire. "What exactly do you think is going to happen?" Claire inhaled slowly. "I do not think. I noticed." Her eyes flicked toward a maintenance ladder positioned near the far wall. That ladder was not there during the 6 o'clock service reset. "The bolt cap on the overhead frame above your entrance point is missing, and someone turned off one of the stabilizer clips. That kind of adjustment is never random." Ethan followed her line of sight. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Then he noticed the small detail she meant. A tiny dark gap where a silver cap should have been. Easy to miss. Impossible to see unless you were looking for it. "How would you even know that?" he asked. Claire hesitated. For the first time, there was emotion in her expression. Not fear. Something older. "Because 5 years ago, my father walked under a stage structure that made a sound just like that." She stopped there. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. Something unspoken settled into the space between them. Ethan studied her again, this time not as an interruption, but as data he had not yet evaluated. He had seen arrogance. He had seen ambition. What he saw now was something rarer. Responsibility without authority. "If you are wrong," Ethan said calmly, "you understand this conversation ends your employment here." Claire nodded once. "I understand. And if you are right." Claire looked at him with the same calm expression she had from the beginning. "Then you lose nothing by waiting 10 more seconds." Ethan looked at his watch. 10 seconds was nothing in business. 10 seconds was everything in timing. He lifted his hand slightly toward security. "Hold position." 9 seconds passed. Then 10. And in the 11th second, a sharp metallic pop echoed from the overhead structure. Not loud, not dramatic, but wrong enough that every trained ear in the room turned at once. And in that moment, Ethan understood exactly why she had stepped in front of him. The sound was small, almost polite, the kind of sound most people would ignore, but trained instincts reacted before conscious thought could catch up. Several guests looked up. A security agent instinctively touched the earpiece in his right ear. Somewhere near the ballroom entrance, a catering manager whispered something urgently into a radio. Ethan Cole did not move. His attention stayed fixed on Claire Bennett. "That is what you heard?" he asked quietly. Claire nodded. "That is what I was waiting for." Another faint vibration traveled through the metal framework above, subtle but wrong, like a piano string tuned just slightly off-key. Claire stepped half a foot to the side, her gaze mapping the ceiling structure with the careful attention of someone replaying a memory she never wanted to have again. "It is a load shift," she said. "Not a collapse. Not yet. But something is no longer balanced the way it was designed to be." Ethan followed her eyes again, now seeing details he had missed before. A cable with slightly different tension. A bracket angled 1 degree off-center. Tiny things. $1 million consequences often began with tiny things. Behind him, his head of security spoke quietly. "Sir, we should relocate you to the secondary entrance immediately." Ethan did not answer right away. "How certain are you?" he asked Claire. She did not answer with numbers. She answered with honesty. "Certain enough that I stepped in front of you instead of staying quiet." That answer carried more weight than statistics. Another 10 seconds passed. Then a hotel engineer hurried into view, alerted by the unusual sound reports coming through internal staff channels. He looked up, his face tightening. "Who authorized access to that lighting support?" he asked sharply. No one answered. Claire spoke instead. "There was a ladder placed under it about 20 minutes ago. No safety cone. No work order posted." The engineer's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "That is not procedure." Ethan finally stepped back half a pace. Not retreating. Recalculating. "Clear the walkway," he said calmly. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Authority moved through the room like a quiet current. Staff redirected guests toward the lounge area. The security team adjusted positions. No panic. Just controlled motion. Claire picked up her forgotten coffee tray, but did not leave. Not yet. She watched until the engineer confirmed the tension bracket had indeed been loosened. Not removed. Adjusted. Enough to cause instability at the worst possible moment. It would not have failed immediately, the engineer admitted. But with vibration from the crowd entering the ballroom, it could have shifted. Ethan exhaled slowly. Not relief. Understanding. His eyes returned to Claire. "You saw all of that while carrying coffee?" Claire gave a small, almost apologetic nod. "I see things when I am working. It is easier when people assume you are not important." That sentence landed harder than any dramatic speech. Ethan studied her for a long moment. "What made you look up in the first place?" Claire hesitated again, then answered simply. "Because important people usually look forward. The people who clean up after them learn to look up." For the first time that evening, Ethan almost smiled. Not from humor. From respect he had not expected to feel. Around them, the evening slowly restarted, conversations returning in cautious waves, but something invisible had shifted. The invisible line between power and unnoticed competence had just been redrawn, and everyone close enough to witness it could feel it. The ballroom doors remained closed for another 15 minutes while the engineering team secured the overhead structure, but the real shift was not in the metal above. It was in the way Ethan Cole now looked at Claire Bennett. Not as background, not as staff, as someone who had just altered the trajectory of his evening with nothing more than observation and courage. "What is your name?" he asked. Claire hesitated as if the question itself felt unfamiliar. "Claire Bennett, sir." "How long have you worked here?" "Claire Bennett." 8 months. "And before that?" For the first time she looked unsure whether she should answer. "Different jobs." Ethan noticed the deflection. He did not press yet. Around them the hotel manager arrived, face pale beneath a practiced smile. "Mr. Cole, I sincerely apologize for the delay. We are ensuring everything meets safety standards before proceeding." Ethan nodded once. "Good. That is exactly what you should be doing." Then, after a short pause, he added, "You may also want to review who had access to that support frame." The manager swallowed. "We already started that process." Claire quietly lifted her tray again, assuming her part in the story was finished. Invisible again. Replaceable again. She had taken 3 steps when Ethan's voice stopped her. "Claire." She turned back. Not quickly. Calmly. "Yes, sir." Ethan studied her for a moment, as if reviewing a document only he could see. "You noticed a structural inconsistency, identified unauthorized adjustment, and made a judgment call under pressure without causing panic. That is not typical restaurant training." Claire gave a small, tired smile. "No, sir. It is not." "So where did you learn it?" The question hung there longer this time. Claire looked down briefly at the polished marble floor reflecting the chandelier light. "My father worked event rigging. Concert stages. Convention builds. He used to say if you listen long enough, buildings talk before they fail." Ethan said nothing. Claire continued quietly. "I used to help him during summers. Handing tools. Watching safety checks. Learning what normal looked like." She stopped again. Ethan understood why. "And what happened?" he asked softly. Claire answered without drama. "One job skipped an inspection. A bracket was assumed secure. It was not. After that, I stopped working those sites." She did not say more. She did not need to. Ethan nodded slowly. "So you learned the cost of small details." Claire met his eyes again. "Yes, sir." Ethan glanced toward the now secured ballroom entrance. "In my world, we call that risk management." Claire almost laughed, but did not. "In my world, we just call it paying attention." A quiet silence passed between them. Not awkward. Measured. Then Ethan did something that surprised everyone close enough to notice. He extended his hand. Not as a billionaire. as a professional acknowledging another professional. Claire looked at his hand for half a second, unsure if she should accept. Then she shook it briefly. Firm. Respectful. No performance. Thank you for not staying quiet, Ethan said. Claire answered simply. Thank you for stopping. In the distance, the ballroom doors finally opened again, but something more important than a business deal had already begun to open in that lobby. For the first time in a very long time, Ethan Cole had just been reminded that awareness does not come from status. It comes from people who have learned what happens when no one listens. The evening resumed its rhythm, but not the same rhythm it had before. Conversations restarted in careful waves, investors returned to quiet negotiations, and the soft piano music filled the air again as if nothing unusual had happened. Yet those who had witnessed the moment kept glancing toward Claire Bennett as she returned to her duties like nothing had changed. She picked up her tray. She refilled 2 glasses of sparkling water. She adjusted a place, setting by half an inch. Invisible again by choice, not by accident. Ethan Cole watched this with a kind of curiosity he normally reserved for market anomalies. Most people would have tried to leverage what just happened. Asked for recognition. Asked for opportunity. Asked for money. Claire asked for nothing. That interested him more than anything she had said. His assistant stepped closer. Sir, the signing room is ready again. We can proceed. Ethan nodded but did not move immediately. His attention remained on Claire as she carried a fresh pot of coffee toward a group of late-arriving guests. Do we have a background profile on her? He asked quietly. His assistant blinked. On the waitress? Ethan did not look away. On the person who just prevented a preventable failure. The assistant understood the correction. Not yet, sir. Then find one. Education. Prior work. Certifications. I want to understand her pattern. Yes, sir. Across the lobby, Claire finished serving and stepped briefly into the service corridor where staff could breathe between tasks. Her manager intercepted her almost immediately, voice tight. With controlled concern. Claire, what exactly happened out there? Claire answered simply. I heard something wrong. You cannot just step in front of VIP guests like that. Claire nodded. I know. You could have caused a complaint. Claire did not argue. Yes. The manager studied her, clearly torn between protocol and the undeniable fact that she had been correct. Just, next time, notify security first. Claire gave a small understanding nod, even though they both knew there might not have been time. When she stepped back into the lobby, she did not look toward Ethan. She did not expect anything from him. That was exactly why Ethan noticed her again. Most people in his world moved toward opportunity. Claire moved back toward responsibility. He finally walked toward the ballroom, security forming their usual quiet formation. But just before he crossed the threshold, he stopped again and looked back. Claire was kneeling slightly to help an older guest adjust a dropped scarf, speaking with the same calm respect she had shown him. No difference in tone. No difference in effort. To her, people were people, not net worth categories. Ethan felt something unfamiliar. Not gratitude. Not obligation. Recognition. The recognition that real competence often lives where nobody is looking. After the signing, he said quietly to his assistant, I want 5 minutes of her time. Understood, sir. As the ballroom doors closed behind him, the deal waiting inside still mattered. Millions of dollars still depended on the next hour. But for the first time that evening, Ethan Cole was thinking about something else entirely. Not the contract. Not the investors. The question forming quietly in his mind was much simpler. How many other people like Claire Bennett had he walked past without ever seeing? Inside the ballroom, the air carried the controlled energy of high-stakes decisions, the kind of room where a single signature could redirect entire industries. Yet even as Ethan Cole took his seat at the polished 12-foot conference table, a small part of his attention remained outside those doors. The presentation screens lit up. Financial projections appeared. Voices discussed expansion corridors, freight automation, and quarterly yield forecasts. But Ethan listened with a different awareness now. He found himself noticing details he normally ignored. The way one executive avoided eye contact during risk discussions. The hesitation in another voice when timelines were mentioned. Patterns. Tiny inconsistencies. The same kind of details Claire Bennett had noticed. The deal progressed smoothly. Questions were answered. Terms were clarified. 43 minutes later, the final document was placed in front of him. Ethan read every line as he always did, slowly, deliberately, a man who trusted verification more than excitement. Then he signed. The room released a collective breath. Hands were shaken. Congratulations were exchanged. Someone poured 12-year aged bourbon into crystal glasses. Ethan accepted none of it. His mind was already moving to the next decision. Hold the celebration for 5 minutes, he told his assistant quietly. I have something else to finish first. Outside, Claire was finishing her shift rotation duties. She was restocking sugar packets, aligning ceramic cups, and checking table numbers for the breakfast crew. Ordinary tasks. Necessary tasks. The kind of work that kept places running without recognition. A younger server approached her. Claire, was that really the Ethan Cole? Claire nodded slightly. Yes. You just walked up and stopped him like that? Claire shrugged softly. I walked toward a problem. The younger server shook his head in disbelief. I would have been terrified. Claire gave a small, thoughtful smile. Being afraid does not fix anything faster. At that moment, Ethan stepped back into the lobby. The energy around him had changed. Not louder, quieter. The confidence of a man who had just completed what he came to do and was now choosing what mattered next. His security slowed as he approached Claire, but did not interfere. Ethan stopped about 6 feet from her, giving her space, the same way professionals do when they recognize competence. Claire Bennett. She turned, slightly surprised but composed. Yes, sir. I believe I asked for 5 minutes. Claire nodded. You did. Ethan glanced toward the seating area. Walk with me. It was not an order. It was an invitation framed like one. Claire placed the last cup on her tray and followed at a respectful distance. They sat across from each other in a quiet corner of the lobby where the city lights from Park Avenue reflected against the glass. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He simply observed. The calm posture, the attentive stillness, the same awareness she had shown earlier. Finally, he spoke. You prevented a mistake tonight. I do not ignore people who do that. Claire answered simply. I was just doing what I thought was right. Ethan leaned back slightly. That is exactly why I want to understand you. Claire Bennett did not answer immediately. She had learned that powerful people often asked questions with hidden expectations, and she preferred silence over guessing wrong. Ethan Cole noticed this and did not rush her. He simply waited, hands loosely folded, posture relaxed but attentive. Outside the glass wall behind them, Manhattan traffic moved in slow rivers of light. Yellow taxis sliding past black SUVs, the distant sound of a siren blending into the constant hum of a city that never truly stopped. There is not much to understand, Claire finally said. I work. I pay rent. I try not to miss things that matter. Ethan studied her expression. No performance. No attempt to impress him. Just facts. My assistant tells me you never filed for any advancement here, he said. Claire gave a small shrug. I did not come here to build a career. I came here to rebuild stability. That answer interested him more than any resume would have. What does that mean? Claire looked toward the window for a moment, as if organizing memories into something simple enough to say out loud. It means starting over somewhere nobody knows your history. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood reinvention. He had just never seen it from this side of the economic ladder. You have technical awareness most risk consultants would charge thousands of dollars to provide, he said. Yet you are carrying coffee. Claire met his eyes calmly. Honest work is still honest work. Ethan almost smiled again. That is not what I meant. Claire answered without defensiveness. I know. A short silence followed. Then Ethan asked the question that mattered to him most. Why did you not try to turn that moment into an opportunity? Claire looked genuinely confused. What kind of opportunity? Most people would have asked for something. A recommendation. A position. A financial favor. Claire considered this for a moment, then shook her head slightly. If I only do the right thing when someone important is watching, then it is not really the right thing. Ethan did not respond right away. That sentence landed deeper than she probably realized. You understand that people spend entire careers trying to get 5 minutes of my attention, he said. Claire answered quietly. Then maybe they are looking at the wrong 5 minutes. For the first time, Ethan actually laughed, not loudly, but with genuine surprise. You are unusual, Claire Bennett. Claire gave a small, polite smile. My father used to say unusual just means you paid attention when others did not. Ethan leaned forward slightly. If someone offered you a role where that kind of attention was not ignored, would you consider it? Claire did not answer immediately. She chose her words carefully. I would consider anything that lets me sleep knowing I earned it. Ethan nodded once, respecting the answer. Fair. He stood, signaling the conversation was nearing its end, but something in his tone had changed. Less evaluation, more decision. You said earlier you learned to listen because of what happened to your father. Claire nodded. Yes. Ethan adjusted his cuff slightly, his voice quieter now. Then tonight, because you listened, something went right instead of wrong. Claire did not know how to respond to that, so she simply said, I am glad you stopped walking. Ethan looked at her for a moment longer before answering. So am I. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. The lobby had returned to its polished normalcy. Guests checking watches, valets rotating arrivals, the quiet clink of glassware returning like nothing significant had taken place. Yet something had changed between them that could not be reset like a schedule. Ethan Cole finally reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a simple business card. Matt White. No unnecessary decoration, just his name, his direct office number, and the logo of Cole Strategic Logistics embossed in dark silver. He did not hand it to her immediately. I do not hand these out often, he said. Claire looked at the card but did not reach for it yet. Why me? She asked. The question carried no excitement, only caution. Ethan respected that. Because you saw risk before anyone else did, and more importantly, you acted without waiting for permission. Claire considered that. Sometimes waiting is how problems grow. Ethan gave a slight nod. Exactly. He placed the card on the small table between them instead of directly into her hand, giving her the choice instead of the pressure. If you ever decide you want work where that skill is useful, call that number. Not an assistant. Not a recruiter. Me. Claire looked at the card for several seconds, then gently picked it up, studying it, as if it represented a door she had not planned to open. I do not have a business degree, she said. I do not have corporate experience. Ethan answered without hesitation. I hire judgment before credentials. That answer clearly surprised her. Most people say the opposite. Ethan allowed himself a small honest smile. Most people also miss what matters. Claire turned the card over once in her fingers, then carefully placed it into the small pocket of her apron, not like someone collecting a favor, but like someone accepting responsibility. Thank you, she said simply. Ethan stood, sensing the conversation had reached its natural end. Do not thank me yet. I am only offering a conversation. What you do with it is yours. Claire nodded. That is fair. Ethan took one step away, then paused, and looked back one last time. Claire. Yes. Do not let this place convince you that being observant is the same as being small. Claire answered quietly. And do not let your world convince you that important people only wear suits. For a brief second, they shared the same understanding. Different worlds. Same language. Ethan inclined his head slightly, a gesture closer to respect than formality, then turned and walked toward the exit where his driver was already waiting. Claire remained where she was, fingers lightly touching the edge of the card in her pocket, as if confirming it was real. Around her, nothing had changed. Orders were called. Dishes were stacked. The night shift continued. Yet for the first time in a long while, Claire Bennett allowed herself one quiet thought. Maybe paying attention had not only protected someone tonight. Maybe it had also opened a door she had not realized she was still allowed to walk through. The night finally began to slow after 10 o'clock, the rush fading into the softer rhythm of late evening service. When conversations became quieter and the city outside turned into reflections of red brake lights and white headlights stretching down the avenues like ribbons of light. Claire Bennett finished wiping down her last table and checked her section one more time, the same way she always did, not because anyone asked her to, but because unfinished details had a way of becoming tomorrow's problems. Her fingers briefly touched the edge of the business card still resting in her apron pocket. She had not taken it. Out again. Not yet. Some opportunities needed silence before decisions. Across the city, inside the back seat of a black sedan moving south toward Midtown, Ethan Cole sat without speaking, his tablet open but untouched. His assistant noticed this. Sir, should I prepare a preliminary candidate assessment on Claire Bennett? Ethan looked out the window for a moment before answering. No, the assistant seemed surprised. No background verification? Ethan shook his head slightly. If I turn her into a file, I will start seeing her like a file. I would rather meet her as a decision. The assistant nodded slowly, making a mental note he did not fully understand. Ethan finally added, just confirm she has the option if she calls. Back at the hotel, Claire changed out of her uniform in the small employee locker room, trading the pressed black service shirt for a simple gray sweater and jeans. Ordinary clothes. Ordinary life. She tied her hair back again, the same practical motion she had done thousands of times, then paused for a moment before finally taking the card out. She read the name again. Ethan Cole. Not as a headline. Not as a billionaire. Just a name on thick paper. She remembered her father's voice from years ago inside an unfinished convention hall. Kid, the people who notice the small things are the ones who keep the big things standing. Claire slipped the card carefully into her wallet, not in the front where impulse lived, but in the inner sleeve where important things waited. Outside, the October air was cool, around 52 degrees, the kind of night where breath almost became visible. She walked toward the subway entrance like she always did. No driver, no spotlight, just another New Yorker heading home after work. Yet something inside her felt different. Not bigger, clearer. Somewhere uptown, Ethan stepped out of his car and paused before entering his building, looking up briefly at the skyline. In business, he trusted forecasts. Tonight he was thinking about something simpler. Awareness. The kind that could not be taught in boardrooms. The kind that lived in people who had learned to listen when nobody else did. He allowed himself one quiet conclusion before heading inside. The strongest systems were not protected by power. They were protected by people who cared enough to notice when something was wrong. And sometimes, the person who changes everything is the one nobody thought to look at twice.